Beep, 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 beep. Morning all. How the devil are we on this very, very important day? Some of you may know, he says, as if there isn't any of us that don't know what's happening today. But I think it's important that what is happening today gets the widest possible audience, as over the next few days we will find out a very important thing. This video is to remind us that for women in Scotland are in court, and they're in court to find out what the legal definition of a woman is, which looks, unfortunately, like it may well end up being anyone. Anyone can be a woman. That's what will end up being if they lose. I met the women from For Women Scotland. They're absolutely incredible. Right? And they've had to do this through court after court, and finally we've got to the Supreme Court. And they will today decide whether or not sex is actually something real or something that can be legally defined out of existence. That's what will happen today. There was a mad individual called Chung on the radio yesterday. You have to hear it to believe it. You have to hear it to believe it. We shouldn't have a definition of woman that allies with the truth and with reality because some women can be violent. That was our argument. And we shouldn't because some men who have long hair and who dress like women are women. That was the argument. These people are so shallow, so deeply stupid. Deeply, deeply stupid. That's what they think. We shouldn't have a definition of a woman that is actually based in the reality of a woman being female. And the reality of the first word most children say. Mama, mama. Shouldn't be there. Because trans women go through lots of surgeries and therefore understand what it means to be pregnant, according to this Chung freak on the radio. Just when you think it's bloody fly. Just when you think, will you go away? Just when you think your chin cannot hit the floor one more time, it does. In this absolute fiasco that we've been going through now for years. And there are still people who don't get it. And never will, I think, I suspect. Australia's already done this and they've already gone mad. Now we're following them down the plug hole if the women for women in Scotland lose. I think the other thing is we're not going to find out this side of Christmas. So we're going to see the court case unfold over the next couple of days, and I should be watching, so you won't hear much from me, because I'm going to be keeping an eyeball on what's going on. If there's anything to report, I will, as usual. Get gesturing and tell you what the hell's going on if I can. But this is incredibly serious, and although I'm jokey, this is really one of the key points in the battle that we've all been fighting for so terribly long. Some of us longer than others. Now is a time to think that this absurd situation in which we find ourselves has been allowed to unfold because we pandered to a group of people who were mentally ill. This business about trans women, which is what it's all about. It's never about trans men, is it? About trans women. It's never about trans men. The judges are completely and absolutely incapable of understanding all this. It's my particular feeling. It's my particular feeling. I've seen comments in the newspapers from Scotland and from England where they say things about trans women who've committed awful and heinous crimes, about how they've struggled with their gender identity all their life, and the guy's 58. And the concept of gender identity wasn't even in the public mind then, let alone the fact that John Money had been pushing this ludicrous construction of his for God knows how long. It still wasn't really in the public mind. We knew what they were. We always knew what they were. Always knew what they were. LARPing fetishistic men. And pretending otherwise is a lie. Okay? A lie. Transvestites, transsexuals, cross-dressers, or as I like to call them, as you know, gusset fumblers. But yeah, here we are, about to go to the Supreme Court. Because as a society, we've lost our minds. We've lost our minds. And so have many of the people in it. There is an inherent stupidity behind all this. And when I'm talking to people, I talk to people all the time about this, and warrior teachers talk to people all the time about this, and you look in their eyes when they're speaking and you see what they're saying, and there's nothing behind it. There's nothing behind their eyes. Nothing. It's a collective insanity, is what it is. A breach from reality. Breach from reality, being driven by many different forces, but none of them grassroots. None of them. This is an imposition, And then we have to ask ourselves the question, what happens if for women Scotland lose? Now, in comparison to some of us, including me, for women Scotland are a reasonable crowd, right? They're reasonable. They're like, more of the reasonable folk, as they would be known as, but it was sex matters, gen spec, reasonable folk, they're seen as, right? Me, I'm not reasonable. And I'm not reasonable for a number of reasons, not least of all which, I've had tussles with these people before in the past, for various reasons, but also because I've spent 25 years ostensibly in the community that they invaded. Right? So there was originally mincing queens fumbling around with their knickers, right? Because they were mincing queens, or they felt more comfortable if they pretended they were something they were not, but it was only ever pretend. And there's raucous drag queens telling jokes. I always think my best drag queen comeback, I was thinking, it was a drag queen that used to say to people who heckled her, did your mother have any children that lived? And that's the kind of dark, blunt type of humour that you would get from the old-fashioned, to a great degree, working men's clubs drag queens, because that's where they used to go, get the beer bottles thrown up and all sorts. But they were fun, and it was about making money and getting the punters drunk. Well, now, once you've amalgamated the lot, which Stonewall did, they amalgamated all of them, and they amalgamated everybody underneath it. It all became nonsense, and now we've got the nonsense in the Supreme Court. I mean, get your head around that. Got it in the Supreme Court. My mate, right, who did drag, so I say to him, you're trans now, You're going to be ridiculous. What are you talking about? Because he just did it to make money and host strange quizzes and things, or games, play your cards right. All that sort of stuff. What we got now? Ludicrous Gusset fumblers, pretending they're something they're not. Now we got it in the Supreme Court. I'm not a reasonable person on this. 25 years. Of knowing who these people are, seeing them all turn up. On a Wednesday night on Canal Street, right, years ago, they used to turn up and they'd have their briefcase. They'd turn up looking like, Monty from The Office, dressed up with a tie on, all ready for his night out. And 2 minutes later, he'd been in the changing room, stuck his bag in a locker and come out as Florence. Right, and he'd flit down the street and go and have a drink. And nobody minded because they were isolated to just practicing their fetish in bars that were fairly fetishy anyway. Now we've got them doing their fetish in the workplace, in Marks and Spencer's, walking down the street, buying KFC, because reasonable people want them to be able to live their lives and listen to their lived experience of what it's like to fumble gussets and wander around in public practicing your fetish. Niche, that's the word for it, niche. So we're only in a situation now because we've forgotten something, that essentially these people are mentally ill. The ones that are at the worst end of it, the ones that are really so insane, so terribly ill that they want to cut bits off their body, so terribly ill that they can't accept reality, so terribly ill that they're unable to deal with the day-to-day life in the body that is their life, that they are their body. They were at the root of all this. And we should never have ever gone down the route that was subscribed to by the likes of John Money and Kinsey and SPAC and all these men that have pushed this. Never. We should never have gone down that route, ever. That's where we are. And now, idiots like that Chung fool on the radio, if you go and listen to it, I'll put a link on the radio, will open the door to a bunch of fetishists to pretend they're women and a bunch of mentally ill women to pretend they're men. That's what they'll do. Because although they're rarer, these trans men, as they call them, they're still there. I've seen them when you won't play ball. I've seen them on Canal Street when you won't play ball. They get so angry. Fag hags on steroids, that's what they are. Right? Fag hags on steroids. So what are we going to do if they lose? Anybody thought about that yet? If they lose, will we finally, will we stop reasonable? Finally, will we stop, consensus? Will we stop and say, no, it's done? Because you know as well as I do that there's no way to repeal the GRA currently. There isn't a legal route to do it. So what would it take to get rid of the GRA? What would it take? Well, it'd probably take leaving the various European courts and leaving various human rights acts. I say we do it. I say we do it. Let's go back to square one. Let's go back to square one. Stick them back in the closet where they belong. Let's go back to square one. Along with their knickers and their panties. So watch. Over the next 2 days, watch. It's also a good opportunity for you to send stuff to folk. It's for you to say there's a really important court case going on. Regardless of what you think of me, this court case is going to affect everyone, because in the next few days, a number of judges, probably all men, will decide whether or not the reality of sex exists. And if the reality of sex doesn't exist, then sexuality doesn't exist. And therefore gays and lesbians lose their rights. And there's gay people going, yeah, but we must protect the trans because they're utterly stupid. It ends, all of it. Being trans in public, dressing in your cross-dressing fetish in public, pretending you're something you're not in public, should be seen exactly for what it is. Fraud. And that is a crime. Fraud's a crime. That's what it should be seen as. It should be that you are fraudulent. Nobody gives a damn what you wear. If you want to do a David Bowie, do it. But workplaces shouldn't have to accommodate you. They shouldn't. Because what are you going to do if a bloke turns up with his gusset fumbled? Looking like some tar at a sweet charity. Hey, big spender, what are you going to do? When the woman writes to you in HR and says there's a man in the office practicing his fetish, the HR can't do anything. They can't do anything. Right, we'll instigate a uniform. Black trousers, black tie, black jacket for everyone. That's where we're going. Uniformity. Equity. Just get your head round the ramifications of this over the longer term. Because idiots like Chung, who looks like they're 12, don't get it. Don't get it. They don't get it because they're not grounded in reality. They don't get it because they're utterly stupid. That's what it is. The enemy is stupid. Okay? Don't pretend otherwise. Men aren't women. Women aren't men. Ever. For any reason. And if we've got to the point where it's got to the courts, there needs to be a public inquiry. Because interpreting the law was why we had Nuremberg. All right? Remember that. Go on, go do something. I'll see you later. Ta-ra, folks.